Hello geographers. Today we're going to be learning about coordinates and how to find coordinates using a topographic map. So here we've got our topographic map of Caledon, a town in South Africa. And I'll point out a few important things when it comes to Mapwork. We've got our key over here that helps us find our different symbols and explains what each thing represents. And then if we go up here, we've also got the scale, which you'll remember from my calculating distance video about how we can use that to calculate distance. But today we're looking at coordinates. So first of all, we've got our degrees of latitudes. These are these horizontal lines. And I always like to remember that latitude is flatitude. So latitude are the flat lines, and then our degrees of longitude are our vertical lines. And that's, you might say if someone's tall, you might say they're long. So degrees of longitude are the vertical lines. So here we can see 34 degrees and 10 minutes south. So that is our first degree, our first line of latitude there, and it's going to go down. But we can see that these lines aren't labeled. So this is where we need to use our knowledge and our skills to figure out what they are. So if we go down here, we can see that this is 34 degrees and 15 minutes south, whereas this one here is 34 and 10. So clearly the 34 stayed the same, but the 10 is going up, which means if this is 10 here, this line will be 11, and then 12, 13, 14, and we get to 15 over here. Same with our degrees of longitude. It's 29 degrees, 23 minutes east. So this is going to be 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, and then 29 minutes east. So not degrees, minutes. So we can see that clearly the Greenwich meridian is somewhere on the left, many degrees that way. Because how do we know that? We are moving away from the Greenwich meridian because these numbers are getting bigger. 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29. Same thing here. The equator must be somewhere up north because we're in the southern hemisphere, and we can see we're moving further away from the equator as we move down the page. Because we're going 10 and then 11, 12, 13, all the way down to 15 minutes south. Now there was a mistake on this map, so that's why you see I've drawn the 29 there. So we can see that we're 29 degrees here, 29 degrees east there, 34 degrees south, and 34 degrees south here. So all very much the same. It's only the minutes and then the seconds that change. So in this video, I will be looking at how to find degrees, minutes, seconds. So grade 8s, more depending on what your school does, but many schools, grade 8s only need to know how to do degrees and minutes. And then the grade 9s, 10s, 11s, 12s, they need to know that, but then also how to put on seconds and calculate that, which we'll do together. So let's do an example together, and we will go every step of the way. So let's try and find together the coordinates of the trig beacon over here. This trig beacon there that I've highlighted in purple or pink. So I always like to say that the very first step you need to do is draw spaces for each parts of your answer. So you do 1, 2, 3, 4, and then a semicolon, because what we've just done is the left side, which will be for our degrees of latitude, and then our longitude components, we do 4 lines again. And then I want you to put in the symbols. We go degrees, minutes, seconds. So the degree is a circle, our minutes is a apostrophe, and then the seconds is a double apostrophe or okay. And then that fourth line, that's where we're going to put our hemisphere. So if we look, so that's step 1, putting those lines. Step 2 is now where we need to put in our hemispheres. So we can see for our degrees of latitude over here, we are working in the southern hemisphere. So that's what we are going to write. We're going to write south. And if we're looking at our degrees of longitude, the vertical lines, we can see that we're working with east. So then we need to put east over there. That's step 2. Now we move on to step 3, and we need to find our degrees. So again, we can see that we're working with 34 degrees south, and if we move down to the bottom of the page, we can see we're still working with 34 degrees south, which means that it doesn't matter where we look on this map, everywhere on this map is 34 degrees south. So that's quite simple. That means we can just go straight ahead and say 34 degrees. And then for our longitude, it's the same thing. We're working with 29 degrees east and 29 degrees east. So everywhere on this map is 29 degrees east. And that's why we have minutes and seconds. Because if I buried some treasure and told someone, don't worry, it's buried at 34 degrees south, 29 degrees east, that's not very helpful. That's this entire area. It's the whole town of Caledon. It's this mountain range. It's this farmland over here. So it'll be very hard to find that treasure. So we use our minutes and our seconds to help us find things more accurately. So that's our third step. Is now we need to figure out our degrees of our minutes. So here we can see that this is 34 degrees 10 minutes south, which means this is going to be 11, this is going to be 12. So we're going to take our pens and we'll actually write that in 11 minutes and 12 minutes. Meaning that our trig beacon over there, that little triangle, is between these two horizontal lines, these two minute lines of latitude. So it's between 11 minutes and 12 minutes. Now, when you're stuck between two, you must always choose the smaller number because we're always working back towards the equator. It doesn't matter how close it is to this line over here. Even if it's nearly touching, we're still going to choose 11 minutes because we always choose the smaller of the two numbers. So then we're going to say it is 11 minutes. And then we need to do the right side, the longitude. So it's between this line here and this line here. So we're also going to write in our minutes there. So we've gone from 23 minutes east to 24 and then 25 minutes. So we're between 24 minutes and 25 minutes, and we're always going to choose the smaller number, which in this case is 24 minutes. So we write that in 24 minutes. Okay, so if you're a grade 8 or if in your school you only need to know up to degrees and minutes, this is where you stop. You've got your answer. We've got 34 degrees south, and then we've got 29 degrees 24 minutes east. Those are our answers. 34 degrees 11 minutes south and 29 degrees 24 minutes east. But if you're in grade 9, 10, 11 or 12, or if in your school you need to know seconds as well, then we need to figure out more. So this is where it gets quite technical. This is where you need to bring your ruler into the equation and actually start drawing your own lines onto the map. So the very first thing you need to do is you need to figure out what's the distance between each line. So for example, if we're looking at our degrees of latitude, so how much space is there between this line and this line? How much space is that? We're actually going to take our ruler, put the 0 in line with the 1 line over here, and then we need to measure this line over here. And we can see that that is 3.7 centimeters, 3.7. So we then need to find the halfway mark there. So half of 3.7 is going to be 1.8 or thereabout. So then we are going to take our highlighter or our pencil, I think pencil's preferable, and we're going to make a mark there at 1.8. Okay. And then we're going to turn our ruler and we are going to line it up with that. And we are going to draw a line across. Okay. So that's our halfway. And we need to ask ourselves how many seconds are in a minute. And I hope we all know the answer there. We know that there's 60 seconds in a minute. So if we're at halfway here, that means that we are at half of a minute, which means it is going to be 30 seconds is that line. Okay. And then I always like to, you must always draw another half. So either on this side, half of 30, or halfway between 30 and 60. So because we're looking for something on this side of the line, we're going to draw the 45. This will just help us get a much more accurate estimate. So we again take our ruler, line it up, and we need to say half of 1.8, which is going to be 0.9. So we take our mark, we go to 0.9 on the ruler, we make a mark, and we then draw a horizontal line again, and we then say 45 seconds. So we can see it's between 30 and 45 seconds, but it's much closer to the 30 seconds. So this is where you need to guesstimate. It's a kind of a guess, but you're estimating. You're looking at the data that you have, the lines that you've drawn, and you can get quite accurate there. So I would say that it's not even halfway between, it's much closer to 30. So it's most likely 35 or thereabouts. So then I'm going to go and write my answer here, 35 seconds south. And then we're going to repeat this process, but in the other way for our degrees of longitude. So we're going to take our rulers and we'll see that from here to here it is 3 centimeters. So half of 3 is 1.5. So we draw that mark over there and we turn our ruler and we draw that halfway mark across. Okay, so that line then is going to be our 30 seconds east line. And again, we then go halfway between our degree of our seconds. So from 0 to 1.5, that's going to be about 0.7 centimeters. So we make our mark over there. Again, we turn the ruler and we make sure it's properly vertical. And then we draw our line. And that is going to be 15 seconds. Why is it 15 and not 45 like the last time? Because remember, we're working back to the equator, or we're working back to the Greenwich meridian, that's 0 there, and the equator is going to be 0. So if we're going from 11 to 12, that means we're going from small to big. So we're going 0, 15, 30, 45, 60. Same thing here. We're going from 23 to 24 to 25. So we're getting bigger. So we go 0, 15, 30, 45, 60. Okay, so now we can see that this trig beacon is quite close to the 0 line. So also that's probably going to be about 4 seconds, I would say. So we can put that in there as 4 seconds. And there's our answer. It is 34 degrees. It is 34 degrees, 11 minutes, 35 seconds south. Okay, that is our latitude. And our longitude is 29 degrees, 24 minutes, 4 seconds east. So you must always make sure you have a ruler with you, and you must draw these pencil markings on, and that will give you a much more accurate detail. For grade 9s, I think 15, 30, 45 works quite well. If you're in the grade 10, 11, 12 band, you might want to be a bit more accurate. So there, instead of breaking it up into 15, 30, 45, you could go 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. So there you're dividing it, breaking up into smaller groups. And that will give you a much more accurate estimation when you do it. All right. I hope this has helped. And if you have any questions, write them in the comment section and I'll get back to you. And don't forget to like and subscribe.